You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
You are now entering Magnified Studios. Welcome.
Coming to you from Magnified Studios, Magnified Pod presents It's Hard to Find a Podcast, covering your favorite indie bands from the 90s Christian alternative scene. Put your tape decks on record. I'm Andrew.
I'm John.
And this is our podcast. And I can't promise that I'm not going to cry at some point this episode.
Same.
This is not a guarantee. This is your warning.
Yeah.
If you don't want to hear a couple of grown men crying, too bad, because we're both highly sensitive dudes and very emotional.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a pretty sad boy season to date so far, just with the content we're covering and how we relate to the material. But
right.
In addition to that, and a highly emotional album that I have pages of notes on that we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
We just lived through another, I don't know. I can't even, it's difficult for me.
Tragedy doesn't even feel
doesn't
appropriate.
No, I struggle to articulate even how grim and hopeless I've felt so far this week. So
yeah,
probably any number of things could set us off in an emotional way.
Yeah.
But we do have some liquid courage to help this week.
We'll expound upon some of our feelings in a little bit, but before we get there, we need to wet the old whistle.
That's right. Now, we've tasted plenty of alcoholic drinks on the pod.
We sure have.
We've had a lot of water wars.
We sure have.
And tasted some water. We've had spicy things.
Yep.
But this is a first. We've got
sure is
a flamin' hot soda. I spotted Mountain Dew flamin' hot at the store, Dew with a blast of heat and citrus.
Yep.
And I was like, we've never talked about soda. There's no real reason to do soda wars right now, but hey, flamin' hot drink exists. We got to try it. So
yeah,
we each have one.
Yes. So it's when you sent this to me, I was like, is this in partnership with Cheetos? Is this a cheese?
Is flamin' hot copyrighted?
I don't know, but it feels like it should be.
It looks like it. There's no Chester Cheetah, but there's a little spicy flamey man. He looks like the Ace Troubleshooter guy, kind of.
He does. Yes, he's holding a match. What is a flame holding a match that's on fire? It reminds me of when you drive by a dentist office and their mascot is a tooth with a mouth. It's just wait a second. Are you saying that
layers,
teeth have teeth? That's too terrifying for me to even think about.
That's a tooth too far.
That's a nightmare. So when you sent this to me, I was like, all right, I will go pick one of these up. But John, I got to be honest. I need to make a confession.
Did you taste some already?
No, I haven't. But I am a little afraid that I'm going to like it.
Yeah. Here's where I confess.
Yeah.
That in our cafeteria in college, lovingly referred to as ARA when we were there, I would fill up on Code Red every day.
Sure.
Which is a pretty gross thing to think about in retrospect.
Right.
I haven't had any sort of I feel like my soda intake is very slim. Maybe at the movies, I'll get a cherry Coke. I'll mess with that Coke Freestyle machine. But my Mountain Dew intake over the last, 20 to 30 years, very small. But
I can't remember the last time I had a Mountain Dew.
That Code Red really hit the spot back in college, but
I don't even know I don't even know what Code Red tastes like. Is it is it cherry? Is it a cherry Mountain Dew?
But it's extreme cherry.
For all your gamer needs?
Yeah, kind of. So maybe it'll awaken something in me and we'll be Dew heads. This will be our thing now. We'll want to do the Dew.
Well, there'll be a couple hot heads.
That's right.
I think we should. Yeah.
Cracker
Yep.
open.
Before we taste it, I think we need to do, crack them open, then we'll do a little sniff.
There we go. Smells like Code Red. Maybe
You know
a
what it
little
smells? Wait,
spice.
you know what? It smells like cherry Starburst.
Ooh. Well,
Get deep in there.
yeah, I could see that.
Hey.
Is this Flamin' Hot a pink boy or Red Rider? We'll find out.
I don't know. Let's do the do, bro.
Down the hatch. Not very spicy. Do you feel any spice?
There's like the tiniest hint of spice.
That's a disappointment. I was really hyping this up.
I don't think I need to be worried about loving it.
I think it just tastes like Code Red.
It also doesn't pack much of a carbonated punch.
No, it's no Topo Chico.
No, it's no Topo Chico.
Topo Chico regular is like spicier than this. This is a disappointment.
This is a disappointment. I'm a little bummed out.
Sorry, everybody.
You know what this is? This is mainstream spicy. It's when they want to call something spicy and they're like, we need to find that sweet spot of what a majority of people would consider spicy and what would be spicy enough for people who like spice. Yeah, this doesn't do it for me. So I'm going to give this 1 lime wedge out of 5.
Yeah, in the Doughboys podcast parlance, I think this is a stank, not a drink. Unfortunately, it tastes fine.
It's fine.
But it doesn't. If I'm looking for a spicy drink, this isn't doing it. I suppose there's a little bit of aftertaste. I can feel it in my throat a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Of a spiciness.
But those sweet heat Starbursts packed more of a
much more
of a heat than this did.
Those were like surprisingly nicely spicy.
Oh man, the pineapple one.
Man, we got to get those on eBay or whatever.
Got to get those back. Starburst got to bring those back. But so John, while I was slumming it at the gas station, picking up the Flamin' Hot Mountain Dew, I felt the need to pick up another gas station snack. There were a couple gas station snacks that I had my eye on. One of which was David sunflower seeds. Okay. Which were the jam. Yeah. Back in my elementary school days, especially when you played baseball and you felt like you were so cool sitting there with your bag of sunflower seeds and it gave you permission to spit on the ground,
spit it right out,
just spitting around to see how far you could spit it. It was great. They were salty and it was like occupying yourself and while you're waiting for your turn to bat, and it was great. And I was like, I don't know if I want to get a whole bag of sunflower seeds, but something I did grab because I hadn't had them in a while.
Oh, corn nuts,
man.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. This was another 90s snack for me. And for the record, I'm not going to eat these into the mic on the pod all episode. I just wanted to partake in these while we were talking about some throwback drinks. But were you a corn nuts fan?
No, corn nuts never really been my jam. I mean, I don't find them objectionable. They just weren't in the wheelhouse.
They're salty and crunchy. It's like, what else do you want?
I do like salty and crunchy, and it probably would pair nicely with this Mountain Dew we got here.
Oh, man.
It's taking you back.
I'm trying to lean away from the mic since they're so crunchy.
No, lean in. We should do an all crunch Patreon episode just for the freaks out there. There you go. Just do like exclusive crunch sesh, a bonus episode.
When I bought these, it reminded me of you're still drinking the Mountain Dew though.
I mean, it's not. I'm not gonna not drink it. It's good enough.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't. Put some hot sauce in it. Maybe that might do the trick.
Ooh, put a little cayenne.
There you go.
After I got these, it reminded me of this corn nuts jingle from back in the day.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I felt like I needed to play this.
Gotta hear it.
This is a song about corn nuts, an intensely crunchy snack. It's not about anything else.
Go to your room and lock the door, cause when you try it once, you want to try it some more. Size doesn't matter, and that's a fact. It might be small, but it's a big impact. Bust a nut, Bust a nut. Grab a bag of corn nuts and bust a nut. They're lightly toasted and hard as hell. Enjoy yourself, we won't tell. Everybody does it, they like it a lot. You can do it in school, just don't get caught. It takes a few minutes if you don't delay. Take your time, it could last all day. Bust a nut, bust a nut. Grab a bag of corn nuts and bust a nut.
It's very catchy.
Toasted and hard as hell. Enjoy yourself, we won't tell.
Corn Nuts, an intensely crunchy corn snack, comes in 7 nut-busting flavors.
What is this from?
It's like a radio jingle.
Okay, amazing.
I don't know if it like how long it was on the radio or who approved this, but it has found new life in the internet. So
Amazing.
grab a bag of corn nuts,
Bust
bust
a
a
nut.
nut.
Yeah, it's neither a corn nor a nut. I don't know if you remember that Seinfeld observation.
But it is corn.
Yeah, it is kind of a nut.
I mean, it's isn't it like hominy? Isn't that essentially what it is?
Yeah, it's hominy. That's the ticket.
Hominy, Shane.
It's hominy. I can feel a little flaming hot in my throat. Talking about busting nuts, feeling flaming hot in our throats, which I guess is nice. I'm just disappointed. I'm still sorry. I'm still fixated. I know you're on a corn nuts journey, and I appreciate that.
No, that's fine. It's fine.
I love this journey for you.
It's going to be hard for me to not.
Crunch it, man. Crunch.
It's no, it's gonna it'll make editing a nightmare if
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like
true.
have to edit out all of my corn nut crunching.
But flaming hot Cheetos, you know,
Yeah.
they're not overpoweringly spicy, but they have enough spice. And if you're gonna claim the name Flamin' Hot, I would hope for at least a comparable experience to the Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
And it says caution on it. It's like
Yeah,
Don't-
this is some bullshit, man.
this is bullshit. Yeah, I'm subtracting half of a lime, so I give it half of a lime, half of a
Yeah.
lime wedge out of 5.
I guess I'll do one lime wedge because I do kind of like the little spicy tingle there afterward. But
We all like a spicy tingle, but
we do.
this is not. It's not tingly enough for me.
No tingle factor, regrettably low.
Yeah,
Enjoy
but
your corn nuts. I was thinking about Big League Chew when you were talking
Ooh.
about being
favorite throwback snacks.
playing baseball as a kid in the 90s.
Ooh, yeah.
Might need to do a Big League Chew. We got to bring some candy back on the pod.
We gotta that's what we'll do. We'll do a session where we do like some favorite throwback snacks. We'll see if we can get some. Go on eBay, see if we can find some like throwback snacks
Gently expired.
from 3 decades ago.
Sure. Some like brick hard gum.
Like baseball card gum.
Yeah, the like chewing gum.
Some
sticks that were,
tops baseball cards with rock hard gum in them.
yeah, which
They
were
were
already
rock
30
hard
years ago. So.
Exactly.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
rock
you don't
hard.
want loose. You don't
I was
want
gonna make a
loose
transition.
gum into like rolling around in your cardboard cards. Anyway, what were you gonna say
No,
about being
it's not
rock
good.
hard?
I'm rock hard to talk about today's album.
Ooh, same.
I'm excited about some voicemails we got here to listen to. Some emails
Mhm.
came in, but in the meantime, tell us your favorite throwback snack.
Yes.
Maybe we'll consider chowing down on the pod. I think we're gonna do an all black licorice episode if that's what I've been hearing the streets.
This is our
say.
last episode of Magnified Pod.
We should have one episode where we have things that we love and we'll both enjoy, and then one episode where we know the other one will hate.
Sure.
I don't know what
Well,
that
you-
would.
You already know I hate black licorice.
I know. So it's
So like,
unfair.
what would be something you would hate? We'll have to take this off pod and see.
Yeah.
You have
I'll
to
think about it. Oh,
plumb the
maybe
depths.
candy corn. Maybe candy corn. But you don't love candy corn. You just accept it.
It's one of those things where if it's at a party, at a holiday, Halloween thing,
You'll eat it.
I'll throw back a few, but am I going to go out and buy it? No, I've never purchased a bag of candy corn in my life. But is
Now, flaming hot candy corn? No, we're talking.
that a thing?
I don't know. It should be. I'm going to investigate all the spicy things we haven't tried yet.
Deal. That sounds good. Well,
right.
before we do that, I need a palate cleanser. I do have
Good call.
myself a Hams here. the special throwback hams.
Ooh.
The can that they released something called the throwback pack to
Just after your tattoo honoring the old logo.
honoring the old
Or
logo.
sort of a mix of logos, as it were.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm entirely responsible for it, but I'm not saying that.
Somebody saw that arm inked up looking nice, and they were like, I think it's time, boys.
Well, Hams did reach out to me on Instagram and said they liked it and they wanted to share it on social media at some point.
All right.
They
You said,
haven't, but
can we can we have a few cases, please? You should share all our ham songs with them.
maybe that's why they haven't shared it yet, because they're like, oh no, this is
This is those hams guys.
this is a pants out ham pants down hams out. That's that guy.
You should legit share that link though, and just be like, if you think that's exciting, I've got the summer anthem.
Yeah. Yeah, my song where I start off with you know who fucking run it.
One of your best moments in life, I gotta say.
St. Paul Teddy Ham. Anyway,
classic.
so yes, we are very excited to talk about Davey B, Christian Branch's his debut full length
Yes.
solo
Yes.
LP. We got to hit all of those because
That's right.
I don't want anybody out there to be like nitpicking, because I know there was there was an EP before
Right.
that was like 10 songs, but whatever. I digress. We'll get there.
Right. It was five of the regular version and then 5 acoustic versions.
Right.
In his defense, but yeah.
In his defense, but still longer than some of his other actual albums.
Yeah. Well, we got 10 songs, no acoustic versions today. So
No.
get ready.
Get your box tissues.
Mhm.
I don't know. That sounded suggestive somehow.
To bust a nut. Is that what we're saying?
Grab box tissues and bust a nut. Anyway, should we get to some voicemails over here?
I think so. Do we have a voicemail line?
We do. We have a voicemail line, 872-762-4763, 8727-MAGPOD. Got our boy Brian from California.
Yeah, hi, this is Brian from California, one of the many Brians. I'm an old school Brian, hopefully, though. Right? I've been there since the very beginning. Anyway, I was a little behind. I'm just catching up on your Pedro the Lion stuff, which I love. Bazan and Pedro the Lion.
We got a new Danny Stairs contender over here for, calling in, under like an overpass or like standing in the middle of a freeway or something.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Danny Stairs who's calling from under the stairs. We got the Rudy librarian Brian who likes to call from inside his Cessna.
Yeah.
Brian from California.
But I think his name was Jason. That called in with kind of a, offended critique of your Facebook poll. The whole EP, which I absolutely love and have a similar. I think it is, came out in 97, I believe in that. By that point, I was well into buying everything tooth and nail. And I mean, I found it to be fucking cool and super rad. And I still love it. Like, it's a very nostalgic album for me. I mean, yeah, the lyrics are problematic, but the string Bazan, I love.
Sure.
Bazan. Anyway, it's great. Also, I don't know if you're there, I'm only on episode 2 right now of the new season, but so you might have already talked about it, but I went to take my youngest son who's 8 years old to the MSPS show in Anaheim, which was really, really freaking cool. And, Yuri was really cool to my son, and Boston, he was starstruck. All of the guys, I thought back up, kind of the women from my band took my son and treated him like a king, and it was just such a cool experience. We loved Beaverhead and got to meet the singer from Mercy Music.
All right. So what I'm hearing is you at the end here is that you took your son to go to see the show.
Yes, the MXPX show.
Okay, at Zebrahead. Oh, the Zebrahead show.
Yeah, his son got to meet some of the band members. Maybe Mike sounded
Dope.
starstruck. Yes, Brian calling in with a defense of the whole EP.
Sure. Which is fair. I mean, if you're an old school Pedro fan, I can understand that, which is why people don't understand our love and appreciation of Teenage Politics by MXPX,
Right,
because
right.
they're like, this album sounds like shit. It's not their best songwriting, and we're like, but it's the best. So
But it is objectively the best. I appreciate your love for the whole EP, Brian, and I
appreciate your appreciate your love of Hole. Whole Fixin' Man, maybe not for us, but I can understand. Again,
Yeah.
Teenage Politics guys,
yeah.
we get it.
Yes.
Um,
And I'm glad
we-
you had a good time at the show with your son. That rules.
we got our girl, my neighbor, my
Ooh.
best friend.
Hey.
Hey friends, it's Mickey. I don't have any hot takes or necessarily any pod related content that I'm saying here. I just wanted to reach out and say that things have been exceptionally heavy lately, and I was just finishing up this last week's episode, and it made me want to reach out to you guys and just kind of more personally say how much I appreciate everything you do. And, it would be so easy to take breaks because of everything that's going on. Like, it's kind of horrible to be living in the United States right now. It's probably not great to live anywhere right now, but it just feels especially heavy here lately. And it would be so understandable if you guys had to take breaks, but you keep coming back and you keep putting out stuff that brings a lot of people joy, and I think that's really awesome, and I appreciate it a lot, and I am sending both of you so much love as we all kind of navigate through these exceptionally heavy times. And I just wanted to say thanks for everything you do, and just, again, I really appreciate it all, and I think that you both are really incredible humans, and I appreciate that you try to tackle a lot of these things and talk about it and do something about it, and it's really great that you're using your platform in that way. So thank you for everything. Love you guys. Magpod for life. And as an aside, I don't actually really anticipate you guys using this in the episode. I just wanted to kind of
Too bad.
reach out in a more kind of personal and meaningful way. You're of course more than welcome to if you want to, but it was just a way for me to say thanks, and here are my feelings, and I love you guys. Okay, bye.
Aw, we love you, Mickey.
Mickey, you're the best. I love you. I mean, there are times where I want to just not do anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are times where in the past I've told John I don't have the emotional energy to fake it for an episode. It's been hard these last couple episodes to try and do it. And I've done my best. But I think the most important thing that we need to remember is, because things are so heavy and things feel just on the verge of something terrible happening at all times, that we need to find ways to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And the people in our lives, and checking in on people.
Yeah.
I sent some texts and I've communicated with Caleb and Meg and Brian, all people, teachers working in schools this week.
Yeah.
And just making sure, just checking in on these people, because not only are they literally putting themselves in danger these days, because of course it just seems absurd that like now you would think of being a teacher as a dangerous job,
Right.
but simultaneously there as something that Brian, the Rudy librarian, Brian Canberra, said to me in Apollo is that like on one side their teachers are heralded as heroes for like throwing themselves in front of students, but they're also like socialists because they're trying to indoctrinate kids with whatever, and they're burning books and teachers are terrible. It's like, I don't know how you handle that kind of pressure to like you're taking care of people's kids, and in some cases like sacrificing yourself for kids, but some people just truly don't understand what it means to be a teacher and how much love you have to have for the job and for the students to do it. I told Caleb before, it takes a really special person to want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And especially now, are you fucking kidding me?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I have so much respect for teachers, and I just can't imagine getting up out of bed, going to school as a teacher, let alone dropping a kid off at school this week.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I did that. And I have always valued and appreciated teachers, but never more than in the last few years, where they adapted and taught my kid over Zoom and then risked their health to come back to teach in person, and now risk their lives to teach little kids because of the country that we live in. We'll get more into that in our upcoming segment here. But thank you, Mickey, for sharing that. We really appreciate that. We appreciate every time that you share anything with us. So thank you for that.
All right. We got our boy, Bobby G, Robert Gay, with a voicemail that we're going to listen to part of. We'll listen to the rest of it on our own time, but he has some Phoenix thoughts.
Phoenix, 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 good stuff. Phoenix, Phoenix, and gives you more than enough to chew on and talk about. Phoenix, 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 good stuff. Phoenix, Phoenix is more than long enough. It could have been shorter. Hey guys, hey Andrew, hey John. It's your boy Bobby G back again with a little snippet of a parody for you. Glad to know you're enjoying it. I think I have a similar journey as you guys do with the Pedro 2.0 material. Phoenix and Havasu grow on me the more that I deal with them. I feel like it's really, really interesting, and the more that I unpack it, it feels like spending time with a real person, which makes sense because it's the soundtracks of David kind of getting back in touch with himself and feeling his feelings, processing who he is all over again. And I am finding a richness in these songs, even if they didn't all hype me up the way that some past material of David's did. At first I kind of felt like, sometimes I still feel this way, that there's like too many sleepy songs on the record. It's kind of like there are several songs on the album, on Phoenix especially, that feel like album closers, kind of like Slow Motion Car Crash from the Headphones record. And it's like, I'm being tucked in, and that keeps happening throughout the record, and then the record keeps going. So I feel like maybe a different track order could have helped the pacing of the record and make it feel a little bit more engaging. But there are so many songs that I really, really love on this record, and I keep finding more that I like about it. I'd say my top three would be Yellow Bike, then Clean Up is probably my number two, and I think Powerful Taboo would be number three. But Quietest Friend and My Phoenix are really strong competitors for that position in my book as well.
So this is what I'm going to say. So I wholeheartedly agree. So when I got COVID, this was before we, I think, started in earnest covering Pedro 2.0. And that was also that night I was supposed to go see him. And I was thinking about this today. I wish I could go see him now after really diving into Phoenix and Havasu and now Curse Your Branches.
Right.
I really, really feel like, and also processing these albums in therapy. I feel like I really have a sense of who Dave is now. And I really think I would appreciate these records a lot more. And I had that sense then, like a few weeks ago. I had a sense that that would be the case. But I already feel that now that I have this attachment and appreciation to these records that I wasn't sure I was going to have in the way that like I connected with Winners and Control and Achilles Heel. Yeah. So those records I'm like, but these, there's just something, this is like subdermal. This is like this is like under my skin. This is like, there's just something different. Like the other ones feel like intellectually get this, but these albums are like heart things that are hitting so different because the other ones I think are really, I'm like, oh, let me just dissect these intellectually because they're stories and they're metaphors and they're, as he did confirm to you that it is, they are metaphors. But these are, these hit different. And I think that that's probably why I needed more time with them.
Yeah.
Because you don't, this is not like an album you throw on and then just immediately go, oh, cool. Hell yeah. You just, there's depth to it. And I'm finding myself growing more connected to Pedro 2.0, which is surprising to me.
Fully agree. As we said, I've had years and years to process and mull over the old Pedro stuff, and much less time to mull over the new stuff. But as it sits with me, it really has been really, really meaningful to me as well.
I like what you pointed out about the the musical reference. There's a lot of musical and lyrical references to past David Bazan material on this album. One of my favorites is the bit in Cleanup that sounds like "And Nature Advances" from Cold Beer and Cigarettes. So I'm glad that you guys talked about that. On My Phoenix, I think it's really interesting to me. Like there's this metaphor of David dealing with his past and with his faith. And it's like, is this going to rise again? What shape is this going to take if and when it reemerges? And maybe it's kind of happening all the time. There's something really powerful about a guy who's, let go of his faith and considers, a lot of that mentality his enemy, to still call it, in a way, his Phoenix.
I think this is a great point because this is something too that I've thought about for myself for a number of years. That, I mean, obviously we've been doing this podcast now for almost coming up on 4 years, and we're talking about a particular scene that we grew up in. We're talking about the church, but we're also talking about Christian culture that was part of the scene as well. And if I truly, truly despised it and hated everything about it, I wouldn't want to talk about it, but there's still something about it that I find nostalgic and that I appreciate and I value that period of time, even though we both talked about some of the stuff that's problematic quite a bit. And there's also the idea that I've thought about a lot is this idea of being culturally Christian in the ways that people, or refer to themselves as lapsed Catholics, or maybe more they like still think of themselves as Catholic, or people who are Jews, but they're culturally or maybe secular Jews, but maybe not super religious. And like why is Christianity so different? And I think it's because we have, or evangelical Christianity, I should say, and I think it's because it has been viewed in such rigid black and white terms. It's like an all or nothing. You're in or out. You're part of the team. You're red or yellow, or red and orange, whatever. You're whatever team you're on. You have to choose which team you're on, and you either choose the team or you're not part of the team. And but like I grew up learning all these songs and all these terms and having all these experiences and having all this knowledge, and what am I supposed to do with that? And like I can still have conversations with people, and because we speak a similar language, we have similar experiences, and that's not something I just want to get rid of because I've rejected the dogma and the supernatural elements,
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're saying you've repented, but you're still tempted to engage with the culture.
There you go.
Yeah, no, that's our whole deal here, and I appreciate you diving in week after week for years, even though there's trauma and pain associated with it.
That's what Doug's for.
That's right. Thank you, Doug.
Doug is he's our secondary producer on the podcast.
Shadow therapist.
Therapist Doug.
Not Doug Funny, although he is helpful and significant to this pod, but Doug your therapist.
That is true. Yep. Well, thanks, Bobby G. We'll have to listen to the remaining 4.5 minutes of that. But we do appreciate your thoughtful thoughts as always, and all of your song parodies. Please keep them coming.
Yes.
Well, thanks everybody for your voicemails, your thoughtful thoughts as always. John, we have some thoughtful thoughts that we started diving into a little bit post Mickey's voicemail. As I started to talk about after that is the importance of taking care of ourselves and those in our lives that we care about. So I want to know how you're doing, because I can't begin to understand the feeling as a parent to let your kid go off to school, because it's supposed to be the place that you would assume they would be safe during the day. They're just learning, and they're doing worksheets and having lunch with their friends or playing on the playground, and that's what's supposed to be happening. And I just want to know how you and Jenny and the boys are doing.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Not well is the answer.
Yeah.
The obsession with guns in this country, to the degree that we cannot seem to do anything about the horrors that they cause here daily, has been something that has been extremely painful for me for many years. I shared on social this week a song that I wrote in high school when a friend of a friend was shot and killed. And I said, we've played that song on the pod before. The chorus is eliminate the problem and you've got the solution, which I knew as a 17-year-old was a simple idea. But in the 22 years since then, my thoughts haven't changed. We know what causes the problem, and we are unwilling to remove the problem. And we've had to live in those 20 years, as the years have gone on, with more and more of our children being the sacrifices that we have to endure in order to continue to let guns rule everything above anything else in this country. So that heartbreak is something I've grappled with for a really long time. My kids are 5 and 7. My younger kid just finished preschool today. He'll be going to the same elementary school as my older kid this fall, so both of them will be there. soon. And as they've gotten older, that horror is just even more stark and personal. And I don't even know how to really respond to what happened this week in Texas and in Buffalo before that, and a million other places before that, and a million places that will come after this. It's just I don't even know what to say. We didn't know how to talk to, my older kid's 7. We didn't really know how much or what to talk about with him. I feel like he's right on the cusp. If he was a few years older, I feel like he would have maybe either known about it already, or we would have been more willing to sort of get into specifics. But after going back and forth for a while, we decided not to talk with him about it that night or that morning before school. But after dealing with the heartbreak of talking through that all night and crying and raging, we dropped him off in the morning. And not long after dropping him off, we got a text message that said, there's been an incident at school, and look for an email. So as we're waiting to see what this email is going to be, we're terrified. And the email says that there was a weapon spotted at school. So they went into a soft lockdown and determined that it was a Nerf gun. So after school, we assumed that he would have talked through that with a teacher or somebody, that he would have been aware that was happening. But when we sort of said, did anything happen today? Do you want to talk about anything? He didn't really bring it up. But we were like, before he really hears about it from anybody else, maybe we give some vague details. And so we kind of explained a little bit of what happened and some of the specifics of somebody coming in and there being guns and kids getting hurt. And he asked a few questions, and at the end he said, I wish you wouldn't have told me. And so that's another sort of, we were debating whether to do it at all. How do you grapple with this? Little kids shouldn't have to. And they're bearing so much of our failures as a country. And I saw some statistic recently that was people deciding to have kids plummeted in the last few years, naming specifically that they didn't want to raise kids in a world like this. And I think it was Elliot was born in 2014. Milo was born the week that Trump was elected.
Right.
We were in that last sort of vestige of sort of normal society for those couple of years. And now it really, it already gave me pause at the time when we talked about having kids and all that stuff, but how dark things have gotten in the 7 years of Elliot's life. I would have pause too now, making that decision and just thinking about everything that they're having to deal with the world that they're inheriting. And I don't know what to tell him. We try to tell him that people around him are doing their best to keep him safe. But the sad thing about this country is it's not limited to school. He can go to the grocery store and have that be a place where he needs to be safe, or the movies, or anywhere. And the reality of that, of him accepting that, is a really hard thing to make peace with. And not just for our kid. Obviously, that's our sort of window into the issue, but for all kids and for all humans, anybody's kids and anybody period matters more than anybody's freedom to own a gun. And I feel like if we can't understand that as a country, then we are a country that is sick and is evil. And trying to make peace with that I'm not make peace with it, but just how do you keep living life? How do you show up for my job and go to meetings? And I'm I can't really talk about our work plan right now. I guess that's to say, I don't have any hope that anything's going to change. I hope that doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop fighting for it too, but we give monthly to Everytown for Gun Safety. I think it's a great organization. We started giving this week to Moms Demand Action. What can you do when you're held hostage in a country by a party and a lot of people who refuse to change? It's tough. I don't know. How are you doing?
Well, first off, tears have been falling out of my goddamn face.
Yep.
this week, as I texted you yesterday, trying to make light of my emotional state, but I'm usually in an emotional state, but I would think one of the least controversial statements one could make is that your 7-year-old is more important than a gun.
Right.
But I guess to some people, that is actually a very controversial statement that is worth being upset about. And I just can't, wrap my head around this. Weeks after people are railing about abortion and being pro-life, and it's like, wait, so you want to fight to make sure women are forced to have babies, but make sure that if they get sent to school, they get shot in the face?
Right.
Like, I can't wrap my head around that logic.
Yeah.
Because this just proves the point that no one actually cares about any babies being born.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
No.
Because it's like that pastor who talked about how the unborn are the easiest group to advocate for, because it's the least messy thing to advocate for. I mean, other than the 50 people that are holding up legislation to expand background checks, that 90% of the 300 million people in this country support, those 50 people are holding it up because the gun lobby is more important than 90% of Americans, evidently. Right. And it's more important for Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz and Marjorie Taylor Greene to get support from the gun lobby and from the NRA than it is to make sure your kids don't get shot when they go to school. The pro-police bullshit just never fucking ends with these hacks. That what they need to do is they need to arm teachers. They need to have man traps and tripwires, and they need to have armed guards and only one door. Ted Cruz says there only needs to be one door into the school.
Yeah, door control.
And it's like, well, wait a second. There were police there that did absolutely nothing except keep parents from going in to help, because the police did dick.
Right.
So
and the armed guard that was at the school did not prevent the kid from coming in.
Nope. Everything that the Republicans are talking about as being the thing to do, having armed guards, having the police there's still 18 kids murdered.
Right. Yeah.
It's bullshit. They know it's bullshit.
Right.
These are the most loathsome people I can imagine. I'm not somebody who wants to have children for any number of reasons, but I love your kids, John.
Yeah.
And I love other people's kids because they're worthy of love, and they deserve to be safe, and they just want to, like looking at the pictures of the kids that died. There was this one picture that stuck out to me the most. I mean, other than seeing the girl who was holding up some certificate that she got at something that morning, and the teacher who gave it to her ended up dying too. So it's like, but there's a picture of one of the kids in the photos that had been used. Like, he was wearing a shirt that said "difference maker" on it. And that's like we're robbed of a kid who his parents thought this is a good kid. Maybe he's thought I could do something good, and but we need to have AR-15s, I guess. That's more important than a kid who wanted to have a chance at life.
Yeah.
So it's all fucked up, and I hate it so much. And officially, fuck your guns, and let it, for the record, let it be known. I've said this before on social media. I've said it to different family and friends, but I want this on the record that if I die in some sort of act of gun violence, I encourage you to politicize the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that's ever going to change anything, is to have some sort of action done.
Right.
And the fake outrage that they're like, stop politicizing it. You know what, you piece of fucking shit. This is all politics.
Yeah.
You got Greg Abbott sitting up on stage. He's a governor. He's a politician. What do you want? Of course, this is something that needs to be politicized because it's the only way that a difference can happen. It's the only way a change can be made is through the systems that we've created. The like, oh, this is all, this is a mental health issue. It's like, okay, do you want to fund mental health support? You don't? Right. Well, then shut your fucking mouth.
Yeah.
You don't give a shit about children. You don't give a shit about mental health. You don't give a shit about any of this.
Right.
Just hug your gun and go to bed and shut the fuck up.
I don't know how to move forward as a country. I mean, there's nothing I can do anymore. I feel like we thought Sandy Hook had to be the end of this. We thought, the Parkland shootings had to be the end of this, and it felt like there was momentum each time. Both times it went nowhere. And I would like to think that 20 little kids, again, will do something. But I don't know. It's a real window into the twisted things that people in this country have been taught and continue to believe. And this idea of it's a hard issue, and there are evil people and good people in the world, and evil people are going to do evil things. Like, that's just a glimpse into the kind of black and white thinking that Curse Your Branches gets into a little bit, where a person reaches a certain point in their life. If you've encountered that kind of thinking and you understand, well, the world doesn't work like that. There isn't black and white. There aren't good and bad people. If you have a gun, is a good guy with a gun isn't always going to solve things. And it's just like, I can't believe that we are unable to overcome those people and that kind of thinking after no major gun laws being passed in the 20 plus years since Columbine. It's staggering. And I think people around the world are like, how can this be? Why don't you care? And we're like, we do care. What else can you do? So I don't know. Do I hope for something different in the years to come, as these kids who are too little to be able to articulate, please do politicize me. As they're growing out older, and a lot of those kids have become activists, survivors of shootings, who've said, yes, like, politicize this. I lived through it. Please politicize it.
Right.
Maybe we'll listen more. I don't know. But it's not a matter of waiting for the old people to die out, because these are all young people, young men doing the shootings and continuing to hold up the shootings as, what can you do? It's a hard issue. I don't know. It's a country that's
sin. It's sin, John. That's that's what it is.
It's a country that's too entrenched in violence and in oppression of people to think beyond that. And that reality is a sad one to continually encounter every time this happens. So
we live in a selfish country is what it is. It's the same people that would think, well, why should somebody else have their student loans paid off? I paid for mine. So why should anybody else get something that I didn't get? It's like, and these are the same people that they won't care until their fucking kid is shot.
Right.
And it's too bad. And it's an unfortunate reality that we live in a country that will drastically lacks any amount of empathy towards, I'd like to think that people are mostly good. And it's just this sort of thing that like makes me question the number of people that can still actively go out and vote for people like Mitch McConnell,
right,
or Ted Cruz by the millions because of being pro-life until it comes to the issue of guns or war or the death penalty or poverty or racism or policing or the criminal justice system or incarceration. It just doesn't make sense. And it's truly discouraging until you think about some of the people that are going to be voting next year, which will be some of the Sandy Hook students who will be 18
Right.
next year.
Yeah.
You got to hope that these younger generations are looking at us and being like, are you fucking kidding me with these people right now?
Yeah.
I
hope.
I hope.
I don't know.
'Cause I have to.
Yeah. What else are we supposed to do? It's the same stuff that Bazan talks about in a lot of
Yeah.
his work is what do you do when evil policy and politicians and talking points and pastors are supported by people who are kind to you in your life. Like our experience with them in day to day are that these are good people, and yet they support such open hatred and devaluing of life. How do you reconcile that? I'll have things to say as we talk about the album this week in terms of defending the Christian faith to some extent against the idea of it's all a lost cause and it's better to just do away with it entirely. But I don't blame anyone for seeing the kind of actions you're describing almost entirely from people who claim to be Christians, and deciding I'd rather do away with this whole thing entirely and not engage with it at all. So I don't know. Yeah, I wish I had anything more articulate to say. As with any awful thing we've dealt with recently, I try to take it day by day, and I try to do the best I can with my family and those around me, and I try to give my money and time to things that I think might help. And I can't worry beyond that. Otherwise I can't
function.
I
barely can these days. It's so hard. It's so hard to not slip into nihilism.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine the profound grief to just get up and move on with your life. I just can't imagine.
No.
So everybody remember to always, not only after tragedies, but every single day, tell the people that you love, that you love them and that you care about them.
Yeah.
Not because you think you might lose them, because it's the only thing that we can hope in is love. Like what else is there? I just don't know what else there is.
Yeah. Well, I love you, buddy. And I love your
man.
willingness to talk about this.
So
the downer episode.
This is a big downer episode. Only half of it is our fault. So
that's true. I blame Flamin' Hot a little bit for not living up to expectations.
I mean, we could have started strong with the Flamin' Hot. I mean, it did tick up a bit with the hams and the corn nuts, but I will say this, despite being a heavy album, it fucking rules.
Oh, it sure does.
And I just can't wait to get into it and also cry in the second half of this episode. So when we come back, we are going to talk Dave Bazan's debut full-length LP, Curse Your Branches.
Yes.
Hey, John.
Hey.
Have you heard of Small Step Records?
The name is familiar, but tell me more.
Well, Small Step Records is a faith-based DIY record label with bands that are melodic punk, pop punk, easycore, emo, and ska. And they have some new albums and new bands releasing records right now on all streaming services. You should check them out.
Andrew, not only that,
Ooh.
They are MagPod's first official sponsor.
Oh, really?
Starburst got nothing on these guys. All right. These guys are the real deal. The tagline is love God, love others, listen to pop punk. You can go to smallsteprecords.com, check out the cool records and merch and bands they have, and we will be, through their generosity, offering some giveaways in the coming weeks and months on our socials of some of these Small Step Bands records. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Also, John, unlike some record labels, which may have come up over the course of the podcast, the artists on Small Step always keep 100% of the rights and ownership of their music.
Yes.
So any money that goes to Small Step goes directly back into supporting the bands. This is a label with integrity, so you love to see it.
Love to see it. Small Step. Check him out.
Smallsteprecords.com.
Hi, my name is Stephen Long, and I host a show here on Rock Candy called Sacred Tension. It's about the spiritual discipline of asking questions. If you find yourself uncomfortable in your faith, or if you find yourself caught between modern science and ancient religion, or if you're curious about the journeys of others who are sorting out faith and doubt, Sacred Tension is a place where nothing is off limits. You will find conversations with pastors, cult experts, spiritual leaders, and skeptics, all discussing the ways we navigate the faiths we were given. Find Sacred Tension right here on Rock Candy and wherever you listen to podcasts.
And we're back.
Oh my God, man. I love this album so much.
It's so good. I feel like every episode, every
I say that every time.
we start off with like, oh man, I love this album so much.
We've had a stretch of truly like some of my favorite albums of all time this season. So
that is true.
But I feel daunted by today's, which I've also said about a couple of Pedro albums, but like this is one of my favorite albums of all time. No hyperbole, and might be, hot take, maybe my favorite Bazan / Pedro album overall.
Wow.
I don't know. When we do rank our Pedro records, I don't think we're going to include Bazan in there, so this wouldn't make the cut. But if we were to include all of them, I think this might be at the top. So it's going to be a lot today. So strap in, everybody. Buckle up.
Yep.
This
there
is
no, I mean this is a new record for me, as in as a lot of Bazan and Pedro records have been for me this season, but I have speculated what this album could have meant if to me, or like how it maybe could have helped me in a period of the few years following this record, that when I was really struggling with some of these questions and what I was believing, I wonder if this could have helped me at least give some, because this was pre so many. I mean, I feel like maybe Derek Webb was maybe kind of a contemporary at the time of doing something similar, or maybe a little bit after Bazan. But there really weren't a lot of post-Christian artists putting out music. So as there are now.
Yeah, I mean, we've said a lot. This has kind of become like the deconstruction anthem record, but that was not terminology that was being used at the time or anything he was really trying to do. As we've said, it's not like he was like, I'm going to write my breakup record with God. That was like the term that started getting used in reference to what this album was. But he just decided to write what came out, like kind of what we were talking about last week with the, like, what was it called, like free form writing or whatever.
Automatic writing.
Yeah, where it's just kind of like he stopped trying to be like, this is going to be a concept album about brothers and politics. He's just like, I'm just going to write what's in my head. And it was all this stuff that was mainly about, this is the first record where he truly parted ways with the church and with Christian thinking. And so all this stuff was in his head about, okay, so if I don't believe this thing, what does it mean for me to believe anything? What do I believe? What is sort of the point of life then? And how do I engage with my family who do believe these things? And just
so some might say that he's bearing witness.
Yes, indeed. Oh man, I have a lot to say about that song. And that's been a repeated thing that we've talked about this season, is his kind of way of using religious language to talk about leaving religion or deconverting or becoming a humanist, or however you want to describe it. And the idea of challenging something like the phrase bearing witness and being like, what does it actually mean to bear witness? And for me, it looks like this, and it looks very different from what I was taught growing up bearing witness looked like. And I find that so powerful. I mean, so this was released September 1st, 2009 on Barsuk Records. It's as you said, his first solo LP. Barsuk is a Seattle-based indie label, home to bands like Death Cab and Dismemberment Plan, Long Winters, all those bands associated with Pedro, as well as Rilo Kiley and lots of other bands. But I got married like 2 weeks after that, after it came out, and I remember I got it in the mail on the same day that I got my wedding ring in the mail.
Amazing.
I have the strong association with opening up Curse Your Branches and my wedding ring and being like, oh, let's listen to this new Bazan album. And
You had no idea what it was going to be?
well, I knew a lot of the songs from shows, but I did not know what it would sound like. And it was jarring initially. If all you had heard is the Pedro records and that one Bazan EP, this is a very different experience. Right. And so a lot of the songs that I had been hearing were just on solo acoustic guitar on tours for a few years before this record. So yeah, it was a little surprising initially to hear the production sound in their ultimate form that they took on the albums. And a lot of the songs on this record are still sort of based in that acoustic foundation, with just a lot of layers on top of that. But as I sort of got used to it, I mean, I think it sounds great. I think I knew that it sounded great, but it's just that sort of, it has like a sheen and a level of production that she just hadn't had on any of his releases up to that point. But boy, oh boy, us big texture boys. Lots of texture on this record to get excited about.
BTB's coming in hard on this.
Coming in hard. I mean, there's so many layers, so much texture. It's just very lush.
Bleeps and
instrumentation, bleeps and bloops, production. And yeah, the sort of, I can tell he's had a freedom in just being like, what if I just stacked like everything on top of this? Yes. It's almost that sort of like Pet Sounds-ish Beach Boys approach to just like, why not throw in like 100 things here when I haven't normally ever done that, and have this sort of like wall of sound style multi-part vocal harmonies. And and that once I sort of was like, oh, that's what this record is, it became like, I think some of his sort of most pop attuned songwriting is on this record. And I'm like, why aren't some of these songs like hit songs on the radio? I don't get it. These are like, some of these songs sound like classics that have been around for a long time. And I just, I love everything about this record. Any of the songs could be in my top 3, truly.
Oh my God. It was hard. It was tough.
It was hard.
It was hard. It was real hard. This was definitely a hard 3. I mean, as in a difficult 3, not a hard 3 as in I knew my 3.
Right.
But yeah, it was a challenge even for somebody who's pretty new to this record.
Yeah, I could make an argument for any one of these, and I wasn't exactly sure how it would shake out. And I think I feel okay about where I landed, but I'm pretty loosey goosey on a couple of these where I'm like, oh, those could slide in there very easily. But yeah, this was very well received by critics. Metacritic describes it as universal acclaim when it reaches a certain number or whatever. And it debuted at number 1 on Billboard's Heat Seekers chart and reached number 116 on the Billboard Top 200 overall. Pretty good. And yeah, it was recorded in Bazan's basement studio. But then additional recording, mixing, mastering done by T.W. Walsh, who we might remember from Achilles' Heel. It's kind of the main other dude in Pedro. Once he left, Pedro sort of dissolved. But they found a way to continue to work together, and T.W. Walsh had done and continues to do a lot of sort of production after being in Pedro. And just, I remember hearing something like, wow, he's really sort of stepped up his production game. And I just think it sounds great. It's Bazan on most instruments here, but Casey Faubert, who we've mentioned a couple times, on the pedal steel. And boy, I feel like that steel guitar sound is just like such a central piece of this record. It sounds so good. Percussion by James McAllister, who we've discussed and who Bobby G called in about, who had done percussion on a couple Pedro records. Josh Autumn on electric guitar on many of these tracks, and then backing vocals from Andy Fitz, Blake Westcott, Josh Tillman from Fleet Foxes, and John Roderick from Long Winters. Yeah, there are multiple songs where it's just like all these different harmonies all of a sudden. It sounds so cool. But yeah, I am daunted by this because there's so much. There's multiple songs that I'm just going to read all the lyrics to, and we're just going to have to deal with that because I didn't know how to like whittle it down to just some of them. So lots to get into. A significant album for me and for many people, and very eager to hear what you think about it all.
Well, I think we should just dive right in at this point.
Let's do it.
All right. 10 song. I mean, this is only a 10 song record. Almost 39 minutes. The first song is over 6 minutes. So we're gonna have to do some jumping around.
Yes.
With this first song because it takes a minute for this song to get where it's going. So we'll listen to a little bit of Hard to Be, and then we'll need to jump ahead. All right, this build up is just outstanding.
Yeah. We got a long intro and a long outro in this one.
Yes, so we gotta jump a little bit here.
You've heard the story, you know how it goes. Once upon a garden, we were lovers with no clothes. Fresh from the soil, we were beautiful and true, in control of our emotions till we ate the poison fruit. And now it's hard to be, hard to be, hard to be a decent human being. Wait just a minute, you expect me to...
Oh, it's so good.
This is so hard to not be in my top 3.
It's my number 3.
Okay.
But I really waffled.
I waffled too.
Yeah.
It's probably, it could be my number 3, but it's probably my number 4. But yeah, why don't you go?
Well, I think it's a perfect sort of encapsulation of the whole record, and I love that it opens in this long, weird way.
Yes.
And then closes in this long, weird way. It really just lets you sort of settle into this lushness of this record and be like, oh, we're doing something like much more ambitious than he's ever done sonically. At least in terms of lots of different kinds of instrumentation and weirdness. And, it opens with that like going in reverse and you're just like already like, whoa, what's happening?
Yep.
And then that piano line into that hooky synth line.
Yep.
And then all these weird swirling synthy textures around it. And then it settles into this kind of bouncy country-ish rhythm. Again, sort of led by the acoustic guitar. And I love how often he sort of returns to that sort of Americana folkish country-ish vibe on this record, even
It's
with
my
all this other kind of
favorite part of this record.
Yeah, man, it rules. He always excels in that sort of mode, but then he adds all this weird stuff on top of it too. But there's this kind of cool walking bass line too, kind of going all over the place. But then that pedal steel,
the shuffly drums too. I love
those
too.
drums. Yeah, shuffly is a good word to use. Lots of shuffly drums in this record. But yeah, when that pedal steel comes in throughout, I'm just like, oof, that's great. The harmonies throughout, so good. Easy to sing along to get those high harmonies on there. So all that stuff just musically is enough for me to sort of be like, okay, this is special enough to warrant a spot, I think, in my top 3. But lyrically, he really lays out sort of the impetus behind the thinking in the record, which is like starting at the beginning in terms of Genesis and the Genesis poem, myth, whatever you want to call it. And I have my sort of own feelings about that. But his sort of rationale behind like, well, once I accept that I don't believe that, or that I find that to be sort of ludicrous, that thread just keeps unraveling. And how can I believe in any of this stuff? And where do I draw the line between what is myth or poem and what is true? And so, yeah, this is something I wrestle with. And I think this album came out at a time where I was sort of mature enough to not be concerned about Dave being like in a different place than me. Whereas earlier in my life, I might have been like, oh, it just hurts me that like he can't see that Genesis is just a poem. It's a metaphor. It's not actually literal, and it's okay to.
You of all people should know it's a metaphor.
It's
Dave.
a metaphor. So is Genesis like a metaphor? Now, I would say yes. Many people say it's literal, and if you read many of the texts that he references on this album, like in Job and in Genesis and in other places where God appears to be a dick, I can totally get why you would just be like, well, wait a second, this is not a God that I'm interested in. And for me personally, I guess what I thought at the time was sort of like, well, you don't have to go all the way from, if Genesis isn't real, literally real, then none of it is. Like, but I also, again, I didn't come from the same background that he did. And this is something I'm interested to get into with you throughout the record, is like, even though I wasn't like, oh, all worked up about him not being in the same place as me, I did kind of, it hurts me a little bit that as a sort of, mainline Protestant person for whom not many people think of the Bible as literal, that for a lot of folks who grew up more evangelical or conservative, that there's a moment where it's sort of like, how do you parse that? And some people can sort of get to a place of saying like, well, I think this about this particular part of the Bible or this part of the tradition, and I think this about this part. But I obviously completely get why that could be the sort of thing that unravels everything for certain people. And I agree that those are unsatisfying explanations of how things are in the world if they're used in that way. If he's sort of saying, wait a minute, you're suggesting that all of the sort of pain in this world is due to God saying, don't eat this thing, and then we did it, and then God punished the people for it. That's why we've been suffering since then. Like, that's not satisfying to me either. So I don't know. I'm talking a lot. Like, what do you think about this?
I think you can't just take in this one song and extrapolate it to just having this be maybe his main issue, because I think like with me, it's more about pulling threads. And so you start examining one thing, and then you start to, because once you allow yourself the permission to do it, then that's when he's talked about this in a sense on this record, about being able to say I don't know, which is like the antithesis to what evangelicalism is, and what he's bringing up, this sort of needing some level of the certainty, which is something he's never had. He's never had that certainty. He's talked about that not being certain through his entire songwriting history. And this is sort of emblematic, as you were talking about, how an appropriate encapsulation of what he's trying to
Mhm.
get to on the record. That so much of the Bible, regardless of whether or not Genesis is a metaphor or a myth or whatever, as I believe it to be, you'd be hard pressed to find many things in the Bible that are not supernatural in some sense. So
Mhm.
because they're mostly going to be stories about God and the supernatural, and so much of the Hebrew Bible is a historical, apart from the fact that it's a lot of mythological stories taken from previous
Mhm.
mythologies as well, be it other origin stories similar to
Right.
Genesis or Gilgamesh and great floods and things of that sort. But I think that's the sort of stuff that, yeah, he's coming at it with this sort of snarky, like, wait a second, you want me to believe this? Because it's not just this. This is not the only
Right.
thing you
No.
need to accept. And it's not just Genesis. It's
Right.
you're talking about not just, it's not even just the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament.
Sure.
It's you're wanting me to accept a fully risen human
Yeah.
who died, um and other things he says in later songs, stuff that miracles that he's never seen that he's expected to believe. And that is the
Right.
sort of the part that I think
Yeah.
I also wrestle with, is like I can't just take something on faith anymore. And I tried to, but
Mhm.
I just can't, because it's hard. And I think
Yeah.
there's sort of two things going on here: that the standard that Christianity has set for what it means to be a good person
Mhm.
is too difficult.
Right.
And then also, just in general, it's hard to be a good person, as he
Yeah.
goes through the album talking about various struggles, as he's done with and other songs about talking about alcoholism and his
Mhm.
other things that he's wrestled with. Yes, there, I mean, I have a lot of feelings about
Yeah.
this, and I don't think it's I don't know. I guess I didn't read it as it being him mostly being only hung up
Yeah.
on the Genesis story.
Yeah. I didn't mean to suggest that was his only. I take that to mean that's the beginning of his unraveling the thread, and that once he started, it was kind of a decision of like, well, then why believe any of this?
I mean,
And maybe
what he
that's
sort of the third verse, he says,
yeah.
I swung my tassel to the left side of my cap, knowing after graduation there would be no going back. He's like, well, if this is where I'm going, I've got,
Yeah.
I can't go back from this
Right.
sort of unraveling of my
Yeah.
faith. And I guess he's just sort of all in. And if you think about Genesis being the beginning of the Bible, and maybe this being the beginning of his new life, being graduation and
Yeah.
moving on, this is sort of just the start. This is just the sort of the beginning of him
Yeah.
dissecting
Sure.
and
Yeah.
reimagining what
Yeah.
Christianity is, or whatever.
That's a good way to think about it, because I guess I had thought about it as being like him deciding, if you find the Genesis poem to be lacking, moving from there to everything else. But it's probably closer to what you're saying, which is like he realized for a bunch of reasons he didn't believe, and sort of pinned it back to that as being like a way to introduce the idea of not believing. And I could talk about why there are parts of the Bible that I find to be poem or metaphor, and there are parts that I find to be bogus and not useful,
Sure.
and why I still believe in the resurrection or the virgin birth or any other thing that might be too much for certain people. I could tell you all about it. I could tell you why I doubt it, why I still believe.
Sure.
But we don't have that kind of time tonight.
Oh, you can buy me a drink. We can
Yes.
tell me all about it.
Yeah, I wrote down the same part that you did, and he references that swinging his tassel on his graduation cap in Phoenix.
Right. Yeah.
So it's still a sort of demarcation for him, and this album is sort of the graduation, as he said. But that verse I always found particularly powerful, because that's about, so he sort of stakes his claim in the first couple of verses about like, okay, I'm making this decision, and then the rest of the song is about So how do I engage now with my family, with these people who raised me, who are very deep in this, with my wife and kids who are sort of being in this world still? How do you move forward? And so, yeah, the next part of that is no congratulations for my faithful family, some of whom are already fasting to intercede for me because it's hard to be a decent human being, like grappling with the ramifications of his decision. And that he talks about that throughout the album too, that like you have to let go of your identity and you have to let go of how you thought that it defined you and your relationship to people and just follow what, you know, makes sense for your life. And I think that's powerful and obviously hard, and it is tricky, and that's what a lot of Strange Negotiations is about, and how he gets through the world. And it's tricky, but I've always found it admirable that he had this realization over a course of years or, you know, time, and then said the things that he learned about his faith and how it informed the world are the same reasons why he decided he could not be silent about feeling that he no longer believed them, and he wanted to talk about that publicly and still grapple with things in a thoughtful way. And I just think that's rare, and why I love him so much. For talking about this stuff. One song in,
a song that we didn't even listen to majority of, but you know, that's okay. Bless This Mess.
God bless the man who stumbles. God bless the man who falls. And God bless the man who yields to temptation. God bless the woman who suffers. God bless the woman who weeps. God bless the children trying her patience. Trouble getting over it is what you're in for, so pour yourself another, 'cause it'll take a steady pair of hands. Holy or unholy ghost, well now I can't tell, but either way you cut it, you should get some distance if you plan to take a stand.
This song rules so hard.
It's my number 2.
Oh shit!
I thought it
Wow.
might make the cut for you.
No, it didn't. It's so good though. The fuzzy ass bass and the drums, they're all so great.
Yeah, it's just, this is what I didn't know what my top 3 would be going into this. Like I said, I love every song, and so they could be very flexible, but this has always been one that for me from second one, I'm just like, whoa, there's just like, there are 3 awesome, overwhelming things happening instantly, which is one, that fuzzy, deep bass part on the synths that you're talking about. That's kind of the song's spine throughout. This loud organ, just like in your face, like cacophonous organ, and then the hand claps, and I'm just like, oh, this is something cool.
Not only that, but like the sort of gospel choirs sort of sound he's got going on too.
Lush multi-part harmonies come in throughout. Oh man. And then that pedal steel comes in at the end of the chorus and takes you back into the verse. And if we could hear a little bit of the ending, it's just where it becomes like this cacophony of organ parts and vocal parts and distorted guitar. I love it. Just like a million things going on. Yeah. So good. Yeah, guitar's going like it's so cool.
Your
man.
Pet Sounds comparison is very apt.
Yeah, I love it. I'm here for it. So yeah, just the sort of being overwhelmed by the sort of sonic quality of this one, I think is enough to push it pretty high up in my favorites. And this is one that I'm just going to read all the lyrics to.
Sure.
I love the idea of bless this mess just in general. And I know there's like the sort of hokey pillow crochet art, bless this mess thing that people
makes me think of like a Kathy comic strips
right,
or something.
But the way that he's using it, chocolate. The way that he's using it here, and this is like the embodiment of that thing we were talking about of reclaiming anti-religious things with religious language, like
sort of Sermon on the Mount-esque.
Yeah, I see your Beatitudes, and I'm going to say, here's what I would like God to bless, please. The man who stumbles, the man who falls, the man who yields to temptation, the woman who suffers, the woman who weeps, the children trying her patience. Just like immediately sort of, let's get God's blessings for people who are trying and it's hard. And it's messy. Life is messy. So I love it as kind of like, these are like new additional Beatitudes that Bazan has brought us. And then, the chorus, trouble getting over it is what you're in for. So pour yourself another, because it'll take a steady pair of hands. Holy or unholy ghost, well, now I can't tell, but either way you cut it, you should get some distance if you plan to take a stand. The trouble getting over religion and sort of dissecting himself from his former identity is saying he's going to need to drink to handle that, which is another theme of this album.
Right.
And whether however he lands on how he thinks about God, you will have to prepare yourself to take the stand that he would need to take to sort of separate himself from that tradition. Go through the rest quickly. More Beatitudes here in verse 3. God bless the house divided. God bless the weeds and the wheat. God bless the lamplit under a bushel. These are specifically in scripture. It's like, a divided house won't stand. Get the weeds out of the wheat. Don't keep your lamplit under a bushel. And he's just like reclaiming it all and being like, let's claim that for also being worthy of blessing. Okay, then the pre-chorus. I discovered hell to be the poison in the well, so I tried to warn the others of the curse. Then my body turned on me. I dreamt that for eternity my family would burn. Then I awoke with a wicked thirst. So for him, hell is also something that I couldn't reconcile with a loving God and isn't part of my faith. But again, I completely understand. And that is for a lot of people the thing, not Genesis, of being like, I can't accept a hell, so I can't accept a loving God, so I can't accept the Bible. Yeah, I think it was so like in my tradition. So my boss, the presiding bishop of the ELCA, has said, if there is a hell, it's empty. The idea that like, A, she doesn't really think there is one, and B, she doesn't think that God would actually damn people to that place. And that's kind of where my thinking is. But I completely get that he's like, once that drop came into the well, it poisoned the whole thing, and I can't accept the rest. And again, I totally understand that. And then it's sort of saying, but he still dreams about his family burning in hell. And that's so much of what the Pedro discography and the Bazan discography is about, is like, even as we're talking like on Havasu, he's still, when he closes his eyes, he thinks about this stuff, and it's still in his subconscious, and he still wrestles with like the most troubling aspects of this. Okay, I'm going to finish reading out the lyrics here, unless you want to add something before I do that.
No, you just finish it, and I have some thoughts about.
Okay, good. Go ahead. So, but then as he closes in the second chorus, he's getting back into sort of how he deals with his family, and at this point, he's drinking heavily. And by my baby's yellow bed, I kissed her forehead and rubbed her little tummy, wondering if she'd soon despise the smell of the booze on my breath like her mom. Through a darkened mirror, I've seen my own reflection, and it makes me want to be a better man after another drink, which I think we've talked about, or maybe Cortland Coffey talked about when he was on the pod or something. But this idea of like, he's recognizing what he's doing in this moment of using alcohol to cope and realizing it's not a good way to do it, and being like, I got to figure this out, but just one more drink, then I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And boy, I understand that. We've named several times that he articulates depression well, and that feels similar to like, I want to get myself together, but what would help me get myself together is if I had another drink.
Exactly.
Man. Then he closes with these additional blessings. God bless the man at the crossroads. That's what he is. God bless the woman who still can't sleep, maybe his wife dealing with things. God bless the history that doesn't repeat. And that's the one that hits the hardest, because he's like, I don't want my kids to go through what I went through, and I want to sort of end this cycle of thinking about hell and worrying about that stuff. At least that's how I interpret it. So anyway, I needed to read all of this because there's so much there, but please take over.
One of the things I think is important to mention, that when we talk about a lot of the metaphor or mythology or poetry or whatever you want to call much of the Bible and literature, even simply being like, yeah, I don't believe it is one thing, and that's fine. That you can say like, I'm not trying to be pointed at you, but just like you as in, but realizing that these stories are weaponized against people.
Yes.
And so they're not truly benign stories that could easily just be dismissed when people are thrown out of denominations for not adhering to what the denomination wants them to believe, or people are persecuted or thrown out of their church, or because they're gay, or because they don't adhere to a specific doctrine that's just the right doctrine, which he alludes to in other songs,
Yeah.
So I think for us growing up in our particular denominations, we're fortunate that we didn't have as caustic of a relationship with scripture that it seems like Dave did, and more troubled denominations such as the SBC, who is going through its own nightmare because they are trash. Saying that if you're not literal, then you don't literally believe the Bible, then you're not a Christian or you're going to hell. It's something that I'm familiar with having concerns about from some members of my family.
Yeah.
Not my immediate family, I should say.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I really flew through all that. Was there anything else you wanted to comment on from the lyrics, or?
No, but I do appreciate the alternative, and the sort of flipping the whole Sermon on the Mount upside down to be a little bit more realistic. Coming off of, it's hard to be, a decent human being. It's like, well, what if God blessed the people who were fucked up? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, and I actually see a lot of what, I mean, again, we're getting into tricky territory here, because like you can point out, well, Jesus literally says this in the Bible, and Dave is contradicting that. But I see a lot of what he's saying is actually being in harmony with the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. Like, I don't think Jesus would see these things, my understanding of what Dave is saying, and be like, no way. Like, I think Jesus could agree to bless those situations and those people, and Dave is just asking for that to sort of be acknowledged or part of the conversation too. I don't know. I find it really powerful.
Same. Please, baby, please.
Ooh. It rules.
When I woke up the next morning, you looked right through me. Through your eyes crying, I could finally see. They said, please, baby, please. They said, please, baby, please. They said, please, baby, please. They said, please, baby, please.
Another slow burner of a song.
This is my number one.
Oh shit.
We have a completely different top three.
We do. Oh my god. I don't think that's ever happened in
not this season.
It hasn't happened this season where we've had zero overlap.
No.
Wow.
But I would have in my top 3 whatever will end up being in your top 3 too. So yeah, this is another one that, like, if I think about what's my favorite song on Curse Your Branches, I'm not like, oh, Please Baby Please. But it's a perfect song. I'm sorry. It's there are no faults to be found. It is so catchy. Um I feel like it could be like a Paul Simon or
Sure.
Paul McCartney like classic, like a song that you've heard for the last 40 years. And I don't understand why this wasn't a giant hit and in every movie trailer. Wouldn't this make a perfect movie trailer song?
It sure
Like,
would.
I don't get it. Why wasn't this more of a thing? I mean, I know he did have success, as I said, but this feels like a true like crossover song. Like, this should be more well known. So I think once I think about it on those terms of just like, this is a perfect pop song, and I just can't deny it.
I mean,
that cool. Yeah,
it's a bummer.
it is a bummer. So maybe
I
that's
mean-
why.
So
Yeah, maybe not everybody wants to hear songs about alcoholism and vehicular homicide. So perhaps that's part of the reason. I think I tend to forget that, like, he's such a bummer, because I'm like, oh, Dave Bazan, my favorite guy. And people are like, oh, but his stuff is like so dark and sad. And I'm like, huh, yeah, I guess I am a dark and sad human sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. That cool little keyboard demo thing in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then just this great melody played on acoustic guitar. The ooh harmony vocals that come in. We got to shout out Yuki Matthews on bass here, who we've mentioned a couple times. He's played with Bazan over the years, but boy, that bass line absolutely rules. Just going all over the neck. Josh Autumn on electric guitar here. Cool little electric guitar flourishes throughout, on top of that steady acoustic melody where it's like bring, bring, bring. Just these little bright notes. I love it. Musically, obviously, thematically, as you said, it's about him reckoning with alcoholism, sort of envisioning what might happen in the future if he doesn't get his act together. And the please means different thing through each verse. First his wife is saying it to him, as in like, please stop drinking. Then
Right.
he says it to his wife, asking if he can have a drink, like, please, can I do this? And then in the third verse, his daughter in the future is pleading with him after having crashed her car and killed people after being drunk behind the wheel. The original third verse that he would sing live before the album came out was, she crashed her car into a tree. Then the album came out and it was killed a mother of 3. And I was just like, Jesus, like, that got
Right.
much darker and more shocking, I think, to sort of emphasize, the future, the legacy that he could leave by bringing a dependency on alcohol sort of into his family. And I also remember him saying, even before this album came out, that he would be calling his wife, like, at a bar, being like, please, can I have a drink? Because he would like try to be transparent about what's happening and would call to plead about things. So I don't know. It's obviously dark and sad, but it also is an articulation of him being like, I can't keep living like this. I don't know. What do you think about it?
I mean, it's like you're saying, and it's an extremely catchy song. And I mean, apart from the bummer alcoholism verses, of course, I could understand why this could be a fun rom-com trailer.
If it was just Please Baby Please and that's all you heard, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a song about a struggling dude, and I appreciate it. And I think I appreciate musically what he's doing more so than where he's going lyrically, but
sure,
because he's sort of getting back to maybe a little bit of storytelling, or maybe he's maybe envisioning a future where he doesn't change and this is what happens.
Right. That's how I take it.
Yeah.
But it is similar terrain to sort of control or winners in that way.
Yeah.
I'm guessing not many people would name this as their number one or even in their top 3. Like, I'm guessing the songs that really sort of deal more with the deconstruction-y stuff is what people would resonate with most immediately, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't really heard this live in a long time, but I would love to. I think it rules.
I think so too. There's not a song on this album that I don't like.
No, correct.
So
There's not a song that I don't love.
yeah, there you go. And title track, Curse Your Branches. Yes.
Texture, baby.
So good.
So good.
Red and orange, or red and yellow. In which of these do you believe? If you're not sure right now, please take a moment, 'cause I need your signature before you leave. When I sleep, I'm usually dreaming, but more and more, there's only one, where every hired gun I've ever fired is making love to you while I look on. All fallen leaves should curse their branches for not letting them decide where they should fall, and not letting them refuse to fall at all. Digging up.
This is my number 2.
Okay. Certainly a top 3 contender for me.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about songs that are just so beautifully
Mhm.
constructed.
Mhm.
This is not exactly like this isn't like a hard to be sort of song where it's just like
Right.
throwing everything out there, which I love that because it's so big and lush. This feels like things are peppered throughout,
Mhm.
and you hear these tiny little slides of things in the
Mhm.
background or whatever, but things that you could only really pick up if you're listening on headphones and you're just like, ooh,
Yeah.
what's
Right.
that? What's that?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate lyrically kind of because this is something that I was talking about. I mentioned earlier about red and orange or red and yellow,
Mhm.
that these splits of denominations, the similarity between different faith groups, and it's just like,
Mhm.
you gotta choose. You have, even though it's almost virtually the same, except we have this one teeny tiny little difference in how we think about baptism.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you don't believe that? Well, you're totally going to hell.
Yeah.
So but like this sort of like, oh, if you're not sure, that's that's fine, but like we need you to commit right
Right.
away.
Yeah.
And all fallen leaves should curse their branches for not
Mm.
letting them decide where they should fall and not letting them refuse to fall at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like there could be some different interpretations
Yes.
for these lines.
Yeah. I was going to ask what you.
Because there's the song that has plenty of tree metaphors.
Yes. There's a lot going on here.
The fallen leaves, one could interpret the fallen leaf being like, okay, so the leaf once on the tree, when the leaf dies, it falls off the tree.
Mhm.
And so one could interpret that as like, I didn't even get a choice in being born or being part of
Right.
this tree, and now, like, I'm dying or I'm falling to the ground. I didn't even have none of this was my decision. And I not only did I not have a choice to be born, like I didn't have a choice to like in any of this be it like, because he's talking about in the very next verse, digging up the root of my confusion. If no one planted it, how does it grow? So like he's continuing that metaphor that obviously this faith doesn't come about simply on its own. If Dave was placed on an island somewhere, this would not be an inherently understood, like obvious truth or reality.
Right.
So this had to be given to him. This theology, some of this trauma and this struggle was given to him. And so in that case, he had no choice about what he believed because it was given to him. And so now it's like, well, like you made me believe this, and so now I don't believe anymore. So like I'm fallen.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a choice, like whether or not to believe this, and now I don't believe it. So it's just like you're pushed into all of these directions. But my favorite part is he says, and why are some hell-bent upon there being an answer, while some are quite content to answer, I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is where I have been for so many years now, because it's so much easier to say, I don't know, because it's a perfectly legitimate answer to say like, oh, is there a God? Was there a God that created all of this? And are we, I don't know. Like, I don't think so, but I don't know. But
yeah,
I don't need to pick red and yellow because I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, it's such a beautiful and kind of sad or maybe even angry metaphor, depending on how you read it.
Yeah.
But I just think I wrote down the same parts that you read. I've always sort of assumed that the curse your branches idea means like all fallen leaves should curse their branches, in the sense of if you believed in this thing so deeply and then you left it, or like even the idea of like God allowing you to leave and not like caring more to keep you, that your response should be to curse that branch for like not caring what happens to you next, or not letting them, refuse to fall at all, like he's saying. So I think I've always taken it, curse your branches, more in the sense of like curse the idea of God that you had that feels unloving, and where you came from, looking back on that after it not serving you, and being like, I curse that experience of where I came from. But I think you're right that as I've sort of spent more time with it over the years, I'm like, it might even be broader than that and be about, being born at all, like you're saying, like, is being a leaf just the idea of life, and like I didn't ask for this. I think that could be it too.
Could be
and
both.
Yeah, it could be both. It could be all of it.
It doesn't need to be dualistic or binary, John.
Right.
Doesn't need to be red,
orange
red
and yellow, or orange and red. Yeah. But like, yeah, that idea, I just like so much of the album. I find it meaningful because he's so emotionally invested. He's determining the God that he understands, having believed in, and being like, I don't like that, and I am choosing to sever myself from it. And so the idea of a leaf who has fallen, wrestling with having fallen, and cursing the branch that you fell from, feels like such a good and moving sort of encapsulation of that. And yeah, I agree. I mean, the part of the song that always kind of hits me the most is the, well, some are quite content to answer, I don't know. I mean, I guess I am saying that I do stake my belief on certain things, but the most comforting thing to me in my faith understanding and in the way that I navigate the world is saying I don't know. And I'm not certain of anything, even while I believe things. And I have mentioned this on the show before, like multiple times, but like the reason that I wanted to study the Bible and theology in college is because I wanted to find some black and white, and I was like frustrated by the gray. And then realizing, poring over the context of scripture like we've been talking about, and church history and different theologians and how faith has expressed itself over all the centuries in the world, like getting to a place of being like, oh, the gray is the most comforting part of that faith understanding. Like once you get to a place of being comfortable with saying I don't know, I found my faith to be much more robust and sort of like easy to live with, and not constantly not worry about like, I'm not going to wrestle with hell because I don't think that hell is real, and that's sort of the end of it for me. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to spend a lot of time thinking about that because it doesn't work for me, and that feels much more satisfying to like, well, think about the parts of your faith that do make sense to you. I don't know. So I like the calling out of allowing for the answer to be I don't know, to be the sort of something worth mentioning or even aspiring to, or he's at least asking like, why are you so insistent on being an answer, and why can't why are there others who say I don't know? And I don't know, I think the world would be a better place, kind of like what we were talking about in our earlier segment, if there was less binary thinking and seeing things in black and whites, and there are good and evil people, and more gray and more I don't knows out there. So
it would be nice.
Yes,
it would be nice. But I think to your point about what you were saying about cursing God for not caring more to keep you from falling, sort of is also fair reading, because that sort of goes to what he says in a later song about God knowing how things would go.
Right.
So, well, I think that is also a fair read. There's just so much. This is what I love about Bazan, that a single song, two dudes could sit down and just like talk about 4 lines and just and pontificate over the meaning, and it can still be so rich.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And again, because there's just so much about us all over this record, like talking about like dads like sitting around talking about like what they believe and doing drugs. And I'm just like what's Dave, where are you at? Let's hang out.
That is a funny piece of it. Yes. Yeah.
All right.
There's so much richness. I was just going to shout out briefly. We talked musically a little bit, those cool guitar textures, that nice guitar sound throughout, but that first chorus we heard is great when the drums and the bass drop out and it's just kind of weird sounds around the vocals. But then in the second chorus, they put back in the sort of stomping drums and the bass, and that version of the chorus also rules. The song is great.
There's a lyrical melody to this song that reminds me so much of Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues.
Oh, interesting.
It was Christmas Eve, babe, in the drunk tank. And an old man said to me, it has like this very similar kind of quality.
That's interesting
to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a certain part in the song that makes me think he's gonna go up to that next vocal level.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's like one of my favorite songs of all time. So that makes me happy.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Harmless Sparks.
They might have burned, but the priests were all taking turns, showing nuns what they had discerned about their bodies in the dark. They carried on from the evening until the dawn, like they should have been all along, making harmless sparks instead of breaking little boys' hearts. And God knows if you notice the millions of small holes and ponder the weight of an apple,
um this song takes a really hard turn there at the end of those initial verses before it gets to the chorus.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this on the pod before, but this is one of the songs that I had in mind when, for a long time, when I saw him playing solo, he would play just the first two verses and then move into the song Fewer Broken Pieces. So he was clearly just working on those first two verses for a while and didn't really know where to take it. And then he added the chorus and it was just like, oh, wow. Like we moved into another song. And he didn't need to add anything else but putting in oh for the end and just have it be that. And that's perfect. That's all you need. It's 2.5 minutes, but like,
yeah,
the first part of the song is cool and sets up like its own type of song and then moves into something really different musically. But I think both parts are great. Yeah, it's just him on vocals and acoustic guitar for those first two verses, and then the chorus kicks off with this like triangle ding, and all of a sudden it's like this funky like electric piano and like organ sound, and I think it's like a cabasa, one of those like silver beaded instruments that you kind of twist around. It all feels very Beatlesy all of a sudden. There are a few points on this album that feel Beatlesy to me, and that the pedal steel comes in at the end for the there's this great organ melody that kind of propels it. I don't know, it's such a breezy, warm song for such a tough topic. I mean, he's talking about priests and nuns should be the ones messing around, if anyone's going to mess around in the church in a consensual way, not kids. But he says it with the instead of breaking little boys' hearts, which is like, that's a gut punch.
It is.
And then moves into this chorus that sort of, it goes from there into this notion of sort of like the hard to be question again, of sort of putting it in the context of the sin of the church, in the sense of priests abusing their power and doing awful shit, and that being the original sin. He says, ponder the weight of an apple compared to the mess that we're in. Like, that can't be it. If we're looking at the idea of an epidemic of priests raping kids, like, oh, it's all because we ate an apple. He's like pondering this little apple being the supposed reason for this kind of stuff happening.
This feels like this is a problem of evil kind of song. In a way, it's like, okay, so we got these terrible, you're talking about the rape of children, and we're just supposed to accept that, like, well, this is I mean, sin is part of what happened because of the fall, and this is just sort of like getting back to our earlier conversation on the episode, like talking about gun violence, and just sort of like what you're willing to throw your hands up over says everything about what you believe. If you're like, well, God gave us free will, and there's always going to be evil, that's what the Bible said, there's always, there will always be evil. So it's like, you're just like, okay, so what, raping kids is cool, and shooting kids in the face at schools, that's also
right.
Okay, so that just tells me everything, and that's why he's like, and then a grown man is like going to be tempted to be like, all right, fuck this, then I don't want to have anything to do with this. Just go have sex with the nun. It's fine. That's what you should be doing.
Right. The harmless sparks versus the fucking world-ending shit that you've been doing behind this power of the church. And then that's the doubt begins to spread like original sin, tying it back in. Man, it's a powerful one. Sort of like deceptively so, because it's almost playful in the beginning, but it's like you realize what he's using that for is something much bigger. So I do like when it sort of transitions into that, like, what are we really doing here? How do we deal with this stuff? I don't know. Good one.
It's a short, Shortest one on the record, and it still packs quite a punch.
Yes.
When We Fall.
With the thread of hell hanging over my head like a halo, I was made to believe in a couple of beautiful truths that eventually had the effect of completely unraveling powerful curse put on me by you. When you set the table, when you chose the scale, did you write a riddle that you knew they would fail? Did you make them tremble so they would tell the tale? Did you push us when we fell? If my mother cries when I tell her what I...
This is my number one.
Okay. I thought this would be in there. It's certainly a contender for me.
Because it's got this song has everything. It has that fuzzy bass, it has the
Yeah, it
driving Americana guitar and rock.
Mm.
It's I mean, it has that like bar rock vibe,
Yeah.
and it's but the guitar tone too is just like, it just feels like you're in a smoky bar, and
Mm.
gives that sort of tumble down vibe that we
Yeah, that's
eh,
interesting.
that I really really dig.
Yeah. I
but-
sort of been thinking about it again in the context of like another Beatlesy. It feels very Beatles.
Oh,
to me.
okay, sure,
Um,
yeah.
But those two things can live together. I mean, if that sort of cool rhythmic, sort of janky drums and those
Yeah.
crunchy guitars, reverby vocals, that bass line, like it
Yeah,
feels
yeah.
those multi-part harmonies. It feels very like, I don't know, that chunky kind of jangly, propulsive, sort of bluesy rhythms with these backup vocals could be either an Americana band in a bar or sort of Beatles and sort of Revolver era. I don't know.
That's
Anyway.
that is true. That is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about like wanting to read lyrics to.
Yeah, we got to read all these lyrics.
Okay. Do you want to hit it, or do you want me to read
Sure. Well, you haven't gotten to read them. You want to read some?
it? Sure. With the thread of hell hanging over my head like a halo, I was made to believe in a couple of beautiful truths that eventually had the effect of completely unraveling the powerful curse put on me by you. And the chorus is, when you set the table and when you chose the scale, did you write a riddle that you knew they would fail? Did you make them tremble so they would tell the tale? Did you push us when we fell? Verse 2. If my mother cries when I tell her what I discovered, then I hope she remembers she taught me to follow my heart. And if you bully her like you've done me with fear of damnation, well, then I hope she can see you for what you are. And then this is the part, this end part that really kind of like, solidifies it for me.
Yeah.
And what am I afraid of? Whom did I betray? In what medieval kingdom does justice work this way? You knew what would happen and made us just the same. Then you, my lord, can take the blame.
Yeah, man, that's like a mic drop of an ending right there.
Yeah, this was the song I was referencing earlier, that he's like, when we were talking about Curse Your Branches, that he's like, well, if you knew I was going to, leave my faith, then and you're the one who are threatening me with damnation, and you're the one who then who did I betray? You're the one who you knew what was going to happen, right? You're all knowing. You knew this was going to happen, and and like you're the one who set us up to fail, to like with the impossible task of believing something that is so difficult to believe.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of, in my mind, he's like, did you push us? You're pushing us
Right.
while you're like already down, or we're about to fall. You just push us over.
Yeah.
And this is one of those, this is a frustration song. And
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate it, because even though this is not a place that I'm in anymore, I
Mm-hmm.
think this in 2013, Andrew would have fucking been all over this.
Yeah.
It still resonates with me because I can access that
Yeah.
feeling and memory and anger and frustration.
Yeah.
And I would be surprised if Dave still lives in this sort of space, because I
Yeah.
think it's hard to
Right.
kind of sustain that. And I think
Yeah.
this is a thing that you grow from eventually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, he's articulating his understanding of God as a bully.
right.
And so I get that you would want to sever ties to a bully. You know, did you just set this all up just to see us fail at the test you created, kind of, and then punish people and made them afraid of God, so that that could be God's legacy? Be afraid, believe in God, because you can be punished and sent to hell. Like, that sucks. I don't like that either.
Yeah.
And I am of the opinion of like, yes, deconstruct that idea of God, but for me, that's not how I understand God, to be a bully in that way. But again, for somebody coming out of this and having that experience, I obviously understand wanting to like name that and call that out and
Right.
separate yourself from it. This is another one about sort of using that, flipping the language, the beautiful truths about love and grace that he sort of learned from Christianity. As I was saying, those are the same principles that led him to realize that he didn't believe. So like, how could a loving God send people to hell, threaten them, all that stuff? But he calls his faith understanding growing up a powerful curse put on me by you. And that's just like, oof, that's another sort of, yeah, like having the sort of relationship to a God who's threatening with hell all the time is a curse. That's a relationship based in like not love, but feeling like owed to this person. Even describing the threat of hell like a halo. Like, man, it makes me sad for how so much of the church and so many Christians have chosen to live out their response to what I also believe to be the gospel's beautiful truths. You know what I mean? Like, it's that rather than allowing for an understanding of God that's not this black and white cartoon bully, that it makes more sense for so many people to just disregard it entirely. It just makes me sad that that's the discourse that this American church has twisted for a lot of people. I don't know. I'm trying not to sound like patronizing. I'm trying to be sensitive here, because I'm like, well, if you believed like I do, then you wouldn't have these issues. Like, I'm not trying to say that. It just bums me out that like this isn't how it just puts people off of the idea of any sort of God entirely, because of the bully perception that is so propagated.
So what you're saying is, if the church lived up to the church
Right.
that Jesus was trying to advocate for, then there'd be less trauma in the world. Is that what you're saying?
It's a crazy idea.
I don't know. I think we should just throw all the gays in hell. I think that's mostly what the Bible's about.
That's easier. Yeah.
That's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah. The good guys with the gun will stop the bad guys with the gun. Gay people can go to hell, and we'll be done with that.
We'll just live in a perpetual nightmare forever and ever until we're all underwater from climate change.
Yay. People ask me why I like depressing music. Maybe it's that. The part 2 where he says, if his mother cries, when she finds out what that he hopes he remembers she taught him to follow his heart. I find that really meaningful. Apparently, I remember him talking about this afterward, that his mother said, well, I didn't know what following your heart would lead you to. And I wish I wish you wouldn't use that as a justification for where you claim following your heart went to. And it's just like, oof, well, yeah, that gets back again to this idea of you raised me with these beliefs, but
Right.
then as an adult, I'm like, well, why aren't you living up to what you claim to? But I don't know. I do find it powerful that he's like sort of defending his mom and being like, um, you know, following your heart is something that is a good parenting technique to tell kids. And I don't know, it bums me out knowing how she responded to that line in real life, and so I always think about that when I hear it now too. But anyway,
it makes me feel a little bit more curious about his relationship with his dad, because the stories you've told me about his dad seem to be a little bit more heartwarming, even though it's
Yeah.
probably not always heartwarming.
Right.
You know, playing on.
I feel like he's
yeah,
he's been more public with sort of stories about his dad, maybe.
yeah.
I don't know.
All right, lost my shape.
You used to feel like a smoker, shivering in the cold, waiting outside the bar till the opener's over. But now you feel like a drinker, 20 days off the sauce, down at the liquor store, trying to call your sponsor. You used to feel like the forest fire burning, but now you feel like a child throwing tantrums for your turn.
So good.
There, this pedal steel, the just
Yeah, sliding around. Oof.
sliding around. So
That
great.
organ that starts it out. Yeah, whatever effect is on the regular electric guitar almost makes it sound like a steel drum or something. It's so like tinkly. And then that all settles into this acoustic guitar foundation for the melody. I love this one. It's another one where there's all these songs, but there's just like so much to chew on here.
I know.
My understanding is that he's sort of comparing his experience in the sort of Christian scene and then leaving it, and sort of describing that now, looking back at it. It could be broader than that, but when he's talking about like, you used to feel like a smoker shivering in the cold, waiting outside the bar till the opener's over. That suggests to me like the lane he was in, his sort of former identity in Pedro was like, he felt sort of left out of the main scene or the main church. And then he says, but now you feel like a drinker 20 days off the sauce down at the liquor store trying to call your sponsor. To me, it's like now he's left it entirely and he feels a little desperate and he's calling his sponsor in terms of like, he's tempted to stay away from the damaging faith that he had. Or he's tempted to sort of like go back to it. And the sponsor's going to like, no, don't go back there, man. That's kind of how I think of it.
Yeah.
And which sort of, the chorus, you used to feel like a forest fire burning. Now you feel like a child throwing tantrums, like, being on fire, like we've talked a lot about on the pod.
Right.
And now you, having had that history, feel like you're just pouting and throwing tantrums because you haven't been sort of allowed to be in an environment that allows you to do the things you're doing now or question things. I don't know. That's how I've thought about it. What do you think?
I don't know. It could be like he used to be on fire, but now you're just angry. Now you're mad.
Right,
Now you're just
right.
like, I don't know. Maybe he's like feels like he's whining or complaining, or
Yeah.
I don't know what it means. If throwing tantrums for your turn is, if the word turn there means that he felt like he deserved some sort of a bigger turn in the spotlight or more fame, or I don't know. But I think to me the most striking ones are the following verses.
Yeah.
He used to sound like a prophet and everyone wanted to know, how could you tell the truth without losing that soft glow? But now you feel like a salesman closing another deal, or some drunk ship captain raging after the white whale. Yeah, that going from this Christian indie legend to somebody who's like maybe feels a little bit like aimless and doesn't know what he's going after, or like what's his direction now, or who is he, where's his boat going?
Right. If his lane and his identity for so long was sort of like people telling him like, wow, like you're telling the truth here, but you still have your faith, isn't it? You're such a prophet in this world. Thanks for like telling the truth. But now that he's got that identity gone, which defined him for so long, he's like, well, what am I? I'm just sort of chasing this white whale of God or my former faith around. And it's very much, lost my shape. He had this identity for so long as somebody who's like, my deal is, I can tell you why I doubt it, but why I still believe, and I'm going to push at the edges with my art. And then if your whole thing is like, I believe, but I'm poking at the edges of the church or capitalism or the scene or whatever, and then to lose that, it's like, well, what am I now? I get it. Like, it's what lane do I occupy now, like as an artist and as a person navigating the world. And when he says he used to feel like a prodigal returning, it's like, is he returning to the sort of Christian music scene even after criticizing the church? But now now he hates everything he created and he wants to watch it burn. Like, that's him looking at the sort of Pedro discography, and rather than being a prodigal, being like, I just want all that to crumble. I don't know. It's a very stark sort of statement. And I do think it's kind of powerful that he's like, he wants to watch that, what he created and the scene he was part of, burn. And that's where he's at, very much like you're saying, with he's feeling that fresh anger. And so today is Phoenix, like that almost feels like it did burn. And now today he's sort of on the other side of that. I don't know. I might be overextending my metaphor here, but I do think that's a powerful idea that, like, the first time I heard it, he's like, oh, he wants to watch it burn, but like, I love Pedro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that today he's like, yeah, it burned, but I found my way out from it. Or a different way to sort of identify, like, think of myself and my identity. So I don't know. There's so much here. It's so good.
Yeah. This is a song written by someone deep in their feels, and I think that he is, you said that he maybe has softened on maybe some of this, you think?
I mean, he still plays a lot of Pedro songs. I think, as you said, there's a time immediately coming out of it when you think of things so starkly, and then with time you're sort of like, well, there are elements of it that are still good or still me or whatever.
He has such an innate ability to choose ending lines for songs.
Like, how about that? I want to watch it burn.
Oh God. Well, I love my dude.
Yep.
Love my dude. All right. Bearing Witness. Oh, hell yeah.
have not seen. From ancient autographs I cannot read. And though I've repented, I'm still tempted, I admit. But it's not what bearing witness is.
This is my number 3.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Very tough for me to leave this one out.
Oh God, so good.
So good.
Talk about a Beatles song.
Yes, very Beatlesy. That guitar line in particular.
Yeah.
Feels very Beatlesy.
Yeah, but those the driving drums, all of it is
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah, that's sort of, again, that sort of electric piano keyboard line that it's so cool. Just like propels the whole thing along.
The harmonies are so tight.
Yeah, harmonies are great.
Ugh.
That country Americana guitar sound. But it's such a classic pop song melody. It's so catchy. And the pedal steel comes in again with the bridge, and then he adds the ride cymbal on the final verse. It's such a jam, man. It's such a, I remember seeing this one live and just being like, oh, this rules. And thematically, I mean, we've been talking about this, that it's sort of the ultimate in the flipping the language thing here. Because he's describing, maybe an alternative to religion, or maybe a more humanist approach of being like, what he repented of was Christianity.
Yes.
But he's still tempted to go back to it sometimes, in the way that Christians talk about repenting from sin and being tempted.
Right.
And this question of asking what actually is bearing witness in this world.
Right.
In each verse being like, well, that's not what bearing witness is. And, determining that the faith he had is not actually bearing witness. Like, I love where he ends up with this last part in particular, though it may alienate your family and blur the lines of your identity, both of which we've talked about a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
Let go of what you know and honor what exists. Whew, it almost makes me cry talking about it. 'Cause I'm just that's such a powerful idea. And I don't know why people can't accept that. We're back to this country and the way we think about guns and these things, where it's just fuck whatever you know about good and evil in the world and what you think God is. Honor what exists. What's happening is the world around us and how we interact with each other as humans, whatever you think of God or anything else. And what exists for us this week is kids getting killed by guns. And so I could not care less what you think about what God thinks about guns, or what the Constitution says about freedom, or what you think about good or evil people. The reality is what is around us. And how do we engage each other in that way? What actually exists objectively that we can prove? And son, that's what bearing witness is. Daughter, that's what bearing witness is. That's what he's leaving as a legacy to his kids. It's so powerful to me. I really find it moving. Yeah.
It's so powerful, so moving. And I think bearing witness to the horrors is what is so hard for people. And because it's what so much of what Dave started off this album with is throwing the tassel to the other side, and there's no going back. And I think that's what people are afraid of. People are afraid of saying, I don't know. People are afraid of pulling the threads because they're afraid of what happens next. They're afraid of what could happen because it could alienate family. What's your identity? Who are you? But what he's had to do and wrestle through, he's doing it very honestly, but that's what bearing witness is. He is honoring where he's at with this record. He could have sat down and wrote another concept record that probably would have been great, but that's not what bearing witness is.
Right.
This album is where he's at, is bearing witness, because when you think about the word witness, it means you have seen something, you've experienced something. He has not seen these biblical miracles. He he has not seen these things that he's trying to make fit, but he can't understand it.
Right.
And, in the things that he's hoped for and the things that he wants, but that's not what exists. And so he's going to admit and bear witness to the things that are present, and that's his children, that's his family. And there's lots of the references to his children on this record, which
I
appreciate.
It makes sense that you're sort of, and we'll get into that more
with the last
with
song.
the closing song in particular. How do you sort of grapple having this sort of identity shift, wrestling with the big questions of life as your kids are getting to an age of being like, what is the world? What do we believe? What is God? It's heavy stuff. Not Heavy Breath, which is the next song. It's almost like the Kendrick album, what we were talking about, where it's like, tell him the truth. This is where he's at right now. Is I think a lot of the reason why we love that Kendrick album is he's bearing witness to where he's at right now. And he's come to kind of a similar conclusion that Dave has. The idea of whatever you believe, how we act in this world and what we do with each other and in the world is what matters.
Right.
And that's a relatively simple idea, but a lot of people can't seem to prioritize that.
Yep.
Anyway.
Great song.
Yeah.
Great top threes. We still have two more great songs left.
Yep.
Oof.
Yeah. Bass.
Yeah.
Good one.
I love that chorus.
Yeah, it's great.
If no heavy breath blew up these lungs while dirt and wet spit hung a ghost in the air, well, we're still here.
Yeah.
The reality is like, okay, wherever we came from, whether it was just straight evolution or if God actually did pick up some mud and blood and like
spit on it
like and create Adam and then create Eve from like whatever it is.
Yeah,
we're here now,
right?
And like
right.
This is where we are, and I think that's that's kind of going back to again. There's so many through lines on this record. This is things transitioning so perfectly from song to song. So about bearing witness, like bearing witness to what is here and now and present. And so I just really, really appreciate that this is where his mind is on this record, even still with some of the songs that are a little bit biting. I still appreciate so many of his takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a continuation of the themes of bearing witness. And I think even if he is in that place of sort of hot anger about where he's coming from, I think it's mature to articulate what he found in his sort of searching, which is like, whatever is out there, we're here now, and what do we do with that? Like, I think that's a much more sort of meaningful conclusion to me than just like, oh fuck, where I came from, burn it all down, which like there's a place for that.
Right.
But to have the conclusion be like, okay, so what do we do then with each
Right.
other? I think that is a theology, if you can call it that, a philosophy, that's very much in keeping with like how it's the same question that I have, even if I have a different belief system of like, so what do we do with being here with each other? This is the second of 3 songs that references a captain, like a ship captain, and
Right.
sort of a doom ship, maybe a crew without a captain. And I think he's talking about finding purpose. What does it mean for him and for others to find purpose without an idea of God?
Right.
And how sort of daunting that might initially feel. That bridge is a ship without a captain, just as doomed as a ship without a crew. Because of all my friends who try to tell the truth, there are still a faithful few who insist they won't know what to do if no heavy breath blew up these lungs. Like, he has some friends who insist that they wouldn't know how to live life without the idea of God.
Right.
But that he concludes, well, we're still here. That's what the conclusion is.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. I find that really powerful. Maybe his friends who are like, well, without God, what's the point of life? Like, if they can't find a meaning in the conclusion of being like, but we're still here with each other, and how do we live our lives? And that is sad. Like,
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's like
so-
those people that are like, well, if there's no God, then what's your
Right.
morale? Where's your
Yeah.
morale? I'm just be able
Just murder
just
everybody.
go out,
Yeah.
rape and murder, and I'm like, that's what you would do?
Right. Yeah, that sucks.
That's a bummer. You're
Yeah.
a bad person.
Right. Yeah.
We can't, but we
Um,
can't skip over verse 2, bro.
Okay, go for it.
While kids and their friends make war by the fire,
There
their
we
old men retire to drink and do drugs. We long for the truth. We argue about it, but most of us doubt it can ever be found.
Yeah. I mean, sounds like how I spend a lot of my nights. The kids are playing over there. I'm going to take some edibles and talk to my friends about what it all means, man.
Lay in your hammock.
Yeah.
Is it hammock weather yet for you guys?
I've had 1 or 2 solid hammock nights so
Hell
far.
yeah. Hell
Deeply
yeah.
enjoyed those. But yeah, talking about most of us doubt it can ever be found, like debating what it is what we're doing here, and is there absolute truth? And yeah, I don't know. It paints a cool scene.
Yes. Last song. In
Yep.
Stitches.
My body bangs and twitches. This brown liquor wets my tongue. My fingers find the stitches. Firmly back and forth they run. I need no other memory of the bits of me I left when all this lethal drinking is to hopefully forget about you. I might as well admit it.
I love this song so much.
The piano, all of it is outstanding.
As we've said before, that is David H. Bazan, his father, on piano, which like just makes it. I mean, the piano part is beautiful, and the song is beautiful, and the fact that he's playing the piano makes it even more powerful. And I'll just get to this now, that like the ending is just the piano part, everything else drops out, and it's powerful, and it's such a haunting, beautiful, sad piano refrain.
It is.
The way that the sort of melody goes of just the piano part at the end almost has this like it goes up and it goes down. It feels almost like questioning, then ends in this sort of definitive minor chord. And it's like, it's so quiet. You can hear his fingers leave the keys and his feet leave the pedals. Like, it gives me a chill. It's like a perfect album closer of a song. And I don't know, this is very, I mean, this is in my top 5 probably. Like, it's one that, like, when I first heard it, like, I've always liked it, but I think as it's sat with me over all these years, the melody's always in my head, and just the power of it is always, I think it has brought up my estimation of the song a lot, where, like, there's so many sort of bangers on this album that I wouldn't have necessarily put it up that high, but as I've thought about it over the years, it means a lot to me. It's like, yeah, those really beautiful kind of delay guitar parts, and that kind of simple, just like thwacking drum beat, like it all, pedal steel comes in, then he goes up an octave, like vocally, about you, so good. And so lyrically, I think it's like, an alcoholic, perhaps it's a story, perhaps it's literally Dave relapsing and trying to forget about religious past, understanding of God and where he was, and the stitches being the remembrance of getting through that past and coming out the other side. But I don't know, all the lyrics throughout, very moving. We can read a couple maybe, but the one that really sort of hits me, like we were talking about earlier, was, the crew have killed the captain, but they still can hear his voice. A shadow on the water, a whisper in the wind, on long walks with my daughter, who is lately full of questions about you. There's such poetry in those lines. And as I said, I can really resonate with, like, evaluating how to talk about ideas of God and life when your kids are, like, so curious about those things. It sort of makes you have to sort of decide how you want to articulate those things to a little kid, and that can be a sort of daunting prospect and causes you to think inward. But the idea of, like, still hearing the voice of the captain, seeing a shadow on the water, hearing a whisper on the wind, and those are the things that remind him of God. Like, I just, oof, man, it really is moving to me.
Yeah. We got to hit those final lines.
Yeah.
When Job asked you the question, you responded, "Who are you to challenge your creator?" Well, if that one part is true, it makes you sound defensive, like you had not thought it through enough to have an answer, or you might have bit off more than you could chew.
Another mic drop.
Yeah.
Moment.
Again, this is kind of going back. It ends with this. It starts off with Genesis and sort of ends with this, like, going through all of these stories, all of the stuff that Dave is talking about, and being like, perhaps this was more than you bargained for.
Yeah.
Bit off more than you can chew, because this is just this is just one person. This is just one person's story, and it's a lot, And so if you're the creator of the entire universe and you don't have an answer for some of these questions for the people that you made, so I appreciate this sort of
totally
snarkiness that he has, but just another great album ender.
Yes, this is like the platonic ideal of a Bazan album closer. I think it's sad and it's powerful and it's a gut punch. And I love it so much. See, this is where it feels sort of like questioning to me still, and then he sort of lands in the definitive, no, things are hard and minor key. It's so good, man.
It's like the creaking of, like, the bench and, like, such a great sound,
hitting different pedals. I mean, if that is how God sounds in the book of Job, who are you to challenge your creator is a shitty thing to say. And I understand, God appears in a lot of ways in the Bible, and you can
Right.
use the Bible for so many different kinds of arguments, but there's
Right.
no denying that sucks.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
No. So I get it. I get
Yeah.
ending this with being like, hey, you said this, God. So that's Curse Your Branches.
Yeah.
I think we're past 3 hours here, right?
This album is an all-timer.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you have gotten to it and that
Me
it
too.
meant a lot to you. I would really be bummed if this season you would have been like, yeah, it's good. I'm just like, oh, come on. Like, I knew this would resonate for you. So it really makes me happy. This has been like rewarding. This has been rewarding in a way that like is unique for us in the 4 years so far.
Yeah. This has been a different kind of section of the pod versus season 3, where I went through some stretches that were difficult for me in different ways.
Right.
This has been like an emotionally challenging stretch for a different reason, because it's prompted me to think about things in a variety of ways that I haven't before, and it is a very welcome. This is a very welcome addition to my musical catalog and repertoire of listening.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad that Bazan and Pedro are in your life.
Yes.
I know people have strong feelings about this record. Please share them with us. We have one more Pedro episode coming up. We'll rank things. We'll talk to a special guest. Hopefully,
Patreon stuff out there.
Yes, we're gonna discuss headphones over on the Patreon. That's the plan. So we got some more coming up, but after that, maybe we should announce moving into those Martin brothers.
Ooh, yeah, we are.
So get out your Starflyer, get out your Joy Electric, your Bon Voyage,
get out your monosynths. We'll just
monosynths. Yeah.
Get out your drum machines.
It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have some fun guests, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, let us know what you think about this lengthy discussion at Magnified Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Follow and subscribe to the pod if you haven't already. Give us those 5 stars if you haven't. Give us a rating in Apple Podcasts. We will read it on the pod. We could use a few more of those. Helps folks find us. Email us at magnifiedpod@gmail.com.
You can leave us a voicemail at 872-762-4763, 8727-MAG-POD.
You can support us at the Patreon, patreon.com/magnifiedpod to get bonus episodes and other fun stuff. And you can pick up some new season 4 merch at magnifiedpod.storenvy.com. Thanks to Small Step Records for sponsoring us. Check out smallsteprecords.com to find out more. And thanks to shadow producer Jason and Bruno at Unoriginal Vinyl for our artwork. Well, I think I hear the voice of the spirit begging us to shut the fuck up. We'll be back to try to make you go astray next week. Ooh, yeah.
God bless the man who stumbles. God bless the man who falls. God bless the man who yields to temptation. God bless the woman who suffers. God bless the woman who weeps.
Got those boom crack booms.
Give me him, baby. Give me that fuzzy bass.
Johnny Potts likes it fuzzy.
Keep it fuzzy.
For more shows like this one, visit rockcandyrecordings.com.